Good morning, everyone, and thank you for dialing in to today's webinar. Today we're going to be talking about the industry insights for the sport and recreation industry in New Zealand. Now, we've got a number of you on the line today, so this may not be the industry of choice for everyone. I'm going to show you in a moment what industries we've covered throughout the year, so if there's something else that you'd like to get your hands onto, please let me know post today's event and I'll make sure I send you all of the details that you need across all of the industries that you may operate. Now, for those of you who haven't met me before, my name is Narelle Stefanac and I'll be your host for today's session. I'm the National Client Training Manager at SEEK and I've been at SEEK for close to 11 years, so really happy to field any questions that you may have today. There's a few ways that we'll do that, so on your screens you'll be able to see two things that you can do. Number one, you can ask questions throughout today's session. To do that, all you need to do is locate that little red box with the white arrow. Once you click on it, there'll be a questions section and you can just type your questions in as we go. And I'll pause at the end of each slide and just answer any questions that you might have. We've also saved a copy of this presentation in its entirety in our Handouts section. Now, if you can access this, you'll see it probably just located under the audio selection. If you click on Handouts, there should be one there. You can download the PDF version of this presentation, so you can have it in your hands as soon as you leave the event. If you can't locate it or if you can't download it for any reason, don't worry, we'll also send you a copy of this presentation and a link to the recording post today's session as well. Now, in terms of those industries that we've already covered, there's a fair few. We've got 30 different classifications on SEEK, and these are the ones that we've covered over the last sort of 18 months to 2 years. So if there's any industries in here that you would particularly like to get your hands on, please let me know and we'll make sure we send these through to you at the end of today's session. There's a few more that we've got left to cover for the remainder of the year. So if you're interested in these, also shout out and we'll make sure we send you an invitation to attend these as well. All right, let's jump into things. There's a few things that we're going to cover today in our quick 30-minute session. So we're going to fly through a lot of the content relatively quickly. I'll go off and I'll show you how you can explore additional data yourself as well so that you can start to explore lots of different industries without us having to facilitate it for you. So we'll show you some background industry insights. So how we navigate the web to be able to identify data that's openly available and publicly free for everyone to access. So how do we locate it? How do we read it? How do we interpret it? And then how do we overlay that information with SEEK data? And the SEEK data relates to the supply and demand. So how likely are candidates to apply to your roles and where are we going to see the volume of candidates coming through? And we do that at a classification and subclassification level. Then we look at salary. How competitive are you going to be with your salary offerings in comparison to what's available out in the open market? And then finally, we look at the behavioural traits of those candidates as well. So how are they actually physically searching? What do we need to consider if we are going to target candidates through advertising? Or should we be looking at search methodologies so that we can use a combination so we can get the best possible talent that's out there? So we'll talk about all of these things over the next 20 to 25 minutes. I'll allow some time at the end to ask questions, but by all means, ask questions as we go. And for those of you who have just joined us, welcome. And we'll be sending out a copy of this presentation. It's also available in the Handouts section. So you'll see a little drop-down box where you can click on Handouts and download it yourself as well. All right, so we're going to be talking about these independent industry insights. So this is where we're looking at information that's been published, usually by some form of government department, so that we can get a really good take on how is the market moving, how has it trended over the last period, and what should we expect in terms of pressure points. Now, to be able to collect this information in New Zealand, we sort of use MBIE data combined with a range of different data sets, and these are all compiled in this beautiful portal called Careers NZ. Now, if you guys haven't seen the Careers NZ website, really encourage you guys to go there and I'll show you how to navigate your way through it in a moment. But the reason why we like to use it is because it's so user-friendly. It is very candidate-centric, so you need to think that they're talking to a candidate or an individual looking for a job, and then how do you sort of layer that on from an employer's perspective. But what we know by looking through this portal at a very granular level is that employment across the sport and recreation sector has grown about 2.4% over the last few years. Now, in comparison to the national average, it's a bit lower than the national average. The national average is sat over those years between 2012 to 2014. The national average is around 2% per year, so compounding, whereas this is a total 2.4% over that sort of 2-year period. So we can see that it's grown at a slower rate, and I'll give you some details behind this because we're combining sort of the growth rate of employment across a number of different sectors. You'll see in the source down here, we've got a range of different sectors that we're looking at. So everything from sports coaches right through to grounds persons and professionals, horse trainers, a whole range of different subsets of occupations. So I'm going to show you where this growth and decline has actually occurred. So in 2012, that's the blue column that shows you how many people were employed in the category in 2012, and then 2014 shows you how many people were employed in that year. The green line shows you the percentage uplift or decline. Okay, so we can see that sports coaches, personal trainers, these guys are the two of the biggest employing categories in New Zealand, and they've had really significant growth. Okay, across the national average was about 2% year on year across New Zealand, so compounding at around, say, 4% over that time period, where sports coaches has almost been double that. So they've had a really significant growth, and it's also the largest employing category. So we can definitely see that when we look at this data, if it's in strong growth, and it's stronger than the national average, then it could put some downward pressure on you if you're looking for talent in these particular areas. Whereas we see other areas like groundspersons, professional sports people, outdoor rec instructors, these roles have all been in slight decline. The interesting part is that they also do a predictive analysis. So they look at what the demand is for each of these categories, and then whether or not they can predict if there's going to be an upward swing or a downward swing in terms of demand for talent. And what they've identified is that across all of these categories, there are two that are in high demand moving forward. And those two are PTs, so personal trainers, and groundspeople. Now, groundspeople is very seasonal. Okay, so there'll be bursts of requirements for talent, usually on a temporary basis and usually around that sporting season. So we do see that that's going to sort of trend up and then trend back down again. So that's why they expect demand to be high, because you'll need a saturation of candidates in a small period of time. The other real driver is that there's a lot more grounds being built, sports grounds, throughout the Auckland area. So there'll be extra demand for groundspeople because of that. PTs, though, it's a real shift to a more health-conscious society. And also with the growth of these sort of green prescriptions, we've seen that people are being more inclined to take on personal trainers because they'd rather a really dedicated focus on their ability to be able to move their health to another level. So demand for these two role types is going to increase. If you require talent in this space, you're probably going to have to compete harder than what you have done previously. You know, PTs were in that high growth area that we just looked at. They were the second most in demand when we looked at the independent data a second ago. But groundspersons had actually been in decline over the last 3 years. So interesting that they're predicting that they're going to be in high demand, but I dare say that's because it's in bursts, it's seasonal and it's temporary needs. So when you need them, it's going to be hard, even though the long-term trend is that they've been in slight decline in total numbers. There's some others as well that are going to be in moderate demand. And these are the ones that have been flagged as moderate, and there's a number of different reasons. A lot of them are either due to seasonal reasons or real small occupations. So therefore, there's a fewer candidates in there, but when they leave their occupation, there's just not enough people to replace them that are skilled in that area. So even though sports coach officials, really it's going to be around snow sport and skydiving. These are the real demand areas, and they currently exist on the New Zealand skills shortage list. Outdoor recreation guides as well, again, will be seasonal demand. Hunter and trapper, no one really wants to do that anymore, right? So we're going to see demand largely because there's too few people in there. There's a lot of people approaching retirement age, and then it's going to create vacancies in this space. Bicycle mechanics, high turnover, but a very small occupation. Recreation coordinator, it's a small, but it's growing steadily. So that whole boost to the public participation rates in terms of Sport NZ really aiming to get people more health conscious and more health fit. So that's going to drive a little bit of extra demand in that administrative capability for recreation as well. So there's some of our external indicators, and I'm going to show you how you can grab this information for yourself and across every industry. So give me a second, I'm going to just clip away to this web page. So you should be able to see, I'll just make sure you've got it as well. You should be able to see this Careers NZ website. What I've done is I've gone to this fourth tab across on the navigation bar to Jobs Database. When you click on Jobs Database, it gives you information on over 400 different occupational sets. It gives you a whole heap of historical data, but also some predictive data as well. It gives you a whole heap of information around salary, around job types. I'll show you how you would use this. So for this particular occupation, for me to be able to get all of those insights across all of those roles, it was pretty easy. I could go straight into this hospitality, tourism and recreation, and then choose sport and recreation. Now under sport and recreation, it lists out each of these job types. And again, it tells you whether the job opportunities are either average, poor or good. Now remember, they're talking to a candidate. So the candidate would be, say, a school leaver or someone who's been working in the industry, and they want to know if I'm going to be in demand or not. And for personal trainers and fitness instructors, they're saying, yes, you will be in demand. For divers, they're saying, no, you're not. There's very low demand, and there might be a whole lot of people competing for those roles. But to get more commentary around this, all you need to do is say, let's click on PTs, because that was a big employing category. And what it does is it tells you a whole range of different things. So you can see on the left-hand side, it can tell you what their usual hourly rates are, depending on the level of role. So if you're a fitness instructor or if you're a personal trainer, it's slightly different. It tells you how many people have been employed in that occupation and how that's grown and expanded over the last 3 years. It also tells you where they get that information from. This is where they've got this sort of dial around job opportunities. Before I show you that, they also have this tab around About the Job. Now, About the Job's great. If you have to write a position description, if you need to write an ad and you actually don't understand the real functional duties within the role and you need to get your head around it, then you click on About the Job and it goes through and it tells you the key elements of what that role will do. So this is what you would put into the body of your ad. So you might put in that they need to assess client fitness and body types. You might put in that they need to design fitness programs for individuals, explain and demonstrate exercises, weight training, or class routines. So you can put all these in as bullet points. It makes it really easy for you to get your head around who should we be interviewing, what do we need them to have, what tasks do we need them to do on a day-to-day basis. Again, if you're writing a PD for the first time, then you can actually use this as some of the body and qualify it with the hiring manager. Say, hey, is this what you would be looking for? What would you add in? What would you take out? Again, skills and knowledge, it gives you a good list of the types of skills and knowledge that they require for this type of role. So this can be really helpful, especially if you're new to the industry or if you're having to write a position description or if you work in the recruitment industry and the hiring manager hasn't given you enough detail. Okay, so think about using this About the Job tab just to help you build out some really robust content in your job ads. Now, if we go back to the summary tab again, it's got this link to job opportunities, and I particularly like this one because it gives you commentary around why they think the role is going to be in high demand, okay? So why the opportunities for candidates are going to be so good. And so it tells you here the chances of getting a job as a personal trainer or fitness instructor are good due to increasing demand for their services. Okay, well, that makes sense, but why is it increasing? Okay, demand for the specialised role of personal trainer is good as an increasing number of people view personal training as a health essential and prefer the motivation and structure that personal training provides. So it starts to give you some really good insight. So the way I would use this is if I'm speaking to a hiring manager and I'm looking for a PT, then I'd say, look, demand for these candidates is going to be really high. So we need to be really competitive. We need to make sure that what we're offering is competitive from a salary perspective, but we also need to be able to think about how flexible we're going to be. Do we need all of that experience? Do we need all of those skills? How can we be flexible? Which bits can we focus on the most and which bits can we be negotiable on the most? Because these candidates are in high demand. And if they're in high demand, it means that they might get chosen by someone else that's a stronger brand than us, or by another company that's offering more money or better benefits. So what is it that makes us stand out? How do we really position this into those candidates, and how do we get them to choose us above and beyond anyone else? Because they are in demand. Okay, so that's how I'd start to use this sort of information. So I really love this Careers NZ portal, and if you operate across a number of different industries, it's great. You can go in, you might be, say, in the education sector, and then you can go under education and it'll list out all of the different types of roles that would sit under education, give you a quick summary around whether they're in good supply or high demand or low supply. Okay, so that sort of stuff would be really helpful for you to be able to see at a glance. All right, I'm going to clip back into the presentation and take you through how you would take this data, which you can see they update their data roughly every 2 years it takes them. Okay, so we get data from 2012 till 2014. The next lot of data may not be updated until 2016, so it can get a little bit laggard, so we may want to get more real-time supply and demand data, which is what Seek provides. So I'm going to give you sort of insights around how supply and demand works, how we capture it, and how you would use it to really inform the way you go about talent sourcing. So from a supply and demand perspective, the easiest way for us to be able to determine if there is adequate supply of talent across the sheer demand that is out there for them is by looking at average applications per ad. So what we do here is we publish an average applications per ad index. We don't publish the absolute number of applications per ad just for competitive reasons, but we do scale it. So if you could imagine coaching instructors get an average of 5 applications per ad, then management would probably get about 25, other would get about 30, and then PTs would get about 40, right? So it just gives you a rule of thumb or an idea. So really interesting that PTs have been flagged as a really difficult area to source, but they're coming up with the highest average applications per ad. Coaching and instruction is also another area in moderate demand, but we get lower average applications per ad there. So this will give you more real-time understanding of where the pressure points might be for you when you're trying to source talent. So what this tells me is that if I'm looking for a coach, then I would say to the hiring manager, coaches are the most difficult role to resource for nationally. So how flexible are we going to be? Would we consider someone from another region, from overseas? What would we do to be able to make sure we get the right person? Is advertising the best method? Because if we're going to get the lowest average applications per ad, perhaps we should proactively try and search for this talent. Now, everyone has, when they advertise on Seek, they have access to both advertising and search. So we have a search platform called Talent Search. If you're not using it at the moment, it's free. It's part of your contract or your ad posting mechanism. Please just let us know. We'll make sure we send you all the details that you need to know about how to use it. It's just relatively new. But ultimately what Talent Search does is it enables you to, rather than just wait for applications, you can proactively go in and just search for candidates. And we have more than 3.5 million searchable profiles that you can go through, and it searches all their profile and their CV as well. So if you're not utilizing that element of your agreement or your ad, just let us know and we'll just tell you how to do it. Now, ultimately, I'd be sort of looking at this and go, okay, well, if we know that we're going to get smashed with candidates for PTs, what sort of screening criteria would I put in? What sort of questions would I want to ask? Would I want to advertise, or would I prefer to just proactively search the talent pools, okay, through the search, through Seek's talent search platform? Again, it just helps inform you which method will be best when I'm looking for a particular candidate. Now, say you are looking for a coach. You know that they're hard to resource for. You probably want to know where they are. Okay, so we do split out where candidates are most engaged, and the way that we measure engagement is when both active and passive candidates have not only completed a search, but they have physically clicked on a short description and moved through to the body of the ad to read the full detail of the ad. Okay, once they're physically reading the detail of the ad, it means that there's actually some level of engagement. You've got an opportunity here to convert them into an application. We see that the largest region by far across New Zealand in terms of engaged candidate supply exists in Auckland. That's fairly common across most disciplines, largely because that's where the majority of the population exists. But if you're in the Canterbury region, you may be wanting to think, okay, how would we entice someone out of an Auckland region or out of a Wellington region to relocate to Canterbury if we cannot source that talent locally? Do we want to do that? What does the cost of that look like? Should we be paying relocation costs? Should we be paying sign-on bonuses? Maybe the talent, if we're going to relocate someone, maybe we should take someone from overseas. And even with the talent search option, you can search for people not only who are residing in the Canterbury region, but those who have flagged that they're willing to relocate there. So that's a really great bonus of using that talent search mechanism. So that way you can start to explore further which candidates are not only going to apply to your role directly, but those who you can proactively seek out. Now, once you've determined whether or not those candidates are in supply or not, you need to know if you're going to be competitive. And competitive is based on what salary you're willing to offer. Now, the Careers NZ portal showed you that what the average hourly rates were for those different types of roles. What we do is we grab the minimum salary band that you guys plug into your roles. We take the maximum salary band that you also use, and then we find a midpoint, and we do publish that in a range of different ways. But what I've got for you today is that average minimum, average maximum salary that's on offer. And if we look at, say, coaches again, they're being paid anywhere between 55 and, say, 69,000 on average is the average salary band that's being utilised in the New Zealand marketplace. So if you're only willing to pay 50 grand, you may not be competitive enough. You may either have to move the dial on the salary if you can, that's not always possible, but you may need to think about, well, what other things do we offer that a candidate would actually really value that could make up for the lack of salary? It might be the location, it might be the brand that they're aligning themselves with, it might be, they might have other benefits, they might have bonuses or healthcare subsidies, or they might get discounted clothing or uniforms, a whole range of different things. But if you're not going to meet the salary expectations of the marketplace, it's really important that you communicate all of those other offerings within the ad so that candidates can then make an informed decision on whether or not that lower base attached to all those other benefits is actually going to meet their needs. So this is a really useful little lever. So really think about, where do our salary bands sit? Can we move the dial on any of them to be competitive? If not, what do we need to do to really ramp up our other offerings, to talk about why other people who are really, really good at what they do, why they choose to work for us? All right, so once you've got that candidate and you decide that advertising is going to be the right mechanism for you, you want to understand how they're going to actually view your ad copy. So what are their search behaviours? So I'm going to show you how this has evolved about 5 years ago, actually. 5 years ago, back in 2010, we launched a mobile site. And back then it was less than 1% of our overall traffic was via a mobile device. Today in New Zealand, more than 47% of all visits are via a mobile device, and we expect that'll go past 50% by the end of the year. Now, to give you a comparative number, in Australia it's 59% of all visits are via a mobile device, and New Zealand's about 12 to 18 months behind that. So we know that you guys are going to start to see candidates make decisions in a mobile environment. In fact, they're doing it already. They make decisions on whether or not they think your ad is right for them, if your opportunity is right for them from a small screen. Okay, they look at it on their phone and they make an informed decision straight away, yes or no. Does this sound like me? Could I be bothered reading your ad content? And could I be bothered applying? So we need to make sure that whatever that mobile experience is like, it needs to be really easy for a candidate so they don't navigate away, and really seamless when it comes to the application process. So one thing I would encourage you guys to do if you've never done it before is look up one of your ads on your smartphone, go through and say, would I want to click on my ad in comparison to all the other ones? And if you think, nope, someone else's looks better than mine, maybe we should do something there. Okay, it's just a really good sort of gut feel. Once you click on your little summary and you go through to the body of the ad, look at the ad copy. Do you want to read it, or do you feel overwhelmed? Because if you feel overwhelmed, it means that it's too dense, it's too hard to read, it's too hard to break through, and candidates will naturally move away from it. They may even intend to come back later, but often they don't, because there's more roles that have been posted since that point in time. So really important that we create some level of structure and capability for candidates to be able to pass their eye through your ad really easily. Click on the apply button, see how easy it is to apply to your role. They should be able to apply to your role within 4 clicks. Okay, really, really simple. Now, if you make it more difficult than that, so you have to go away to another website, you have to pinch the screen, you have to try and attach files, which you can't attach from a mobile phone anyway. If that's your system and that's how you do it at the moment, you need to address it. You need to mobile optimize your application process, because more than 30% of applications are now coming through a mobile device. So definitely focus on those things. If you need help, just get in contact with Seek. We have account managers in many locations across New Zealand, and they'll be able to step you through how you can improve that application experience. And it won't cost you anything. We have a range of different solutions that we can work with your providers on. Allison's asked, so would our ad on Seek website adjust to a mobile ad, or are they separate ads? No, Allison, it's just one ad. So you post your ad and you write it once, and then we customize it for each of the different screens that it might go out to. But you need to understand some of the really core basic principles of advertising. We do have a few webinars coming up, so I might just flick you a link to those so that you can have a look at what does good structure look like. And the idea is that you want to create some bolded headings so the candidate can scan their eye through your content really easily, and you want your content to be really concise so that they don't get bored. So it's really simple things, but perhaps if you come to an ad writing webinar, that might be more useful for you. We can go into a lot more detail. Now, when it comes to how they search, well, they search in lots of different ways. You can see all those blue bubbles, they don't add up, right? So they're using a combination of different things. When they're using keywords, they typically are skewed towards a job title, but it depends on the industry. So sport and rec, they might be more skewed towards a particular discipline. Okay, so they might put in golf or skiing or, that sort of thing. So there'll be different skews depending on the industry, and I'm going to show you the top 20 keywords in a moment for this particular category. We also see that people are typically using location. Okay, really strong motivator is I want to work in a particular area, whether that's where I currently reside or I'm wanting to reside. People are really clear about which locations they're willing to work in. Now, one thing that we've built out recently is the capability to pick up suburb. So if someone types in the keyword of a suburb, say Dargaville, then what will happen is when we give them the results, we'll take out the area and we'll replace it with Dargaville. Okay, so that they can look at it and they go, oh, this job is a perfect match for me. So we've just built out some new technology. It will be released very, very soon. So really important, if you do know the suburb, put it somewhere in your ad. It doesn't matter where it is. We'll find it. We'll use some algorithms to be able to surface through your ad, pick up the suburb, and then we'll populate it for the candidate so they can see it first, and we'll give you extra sort of boosting in the rankings to be able to get your ad towards the top of the list. So wherever you can use suburb, brilliant, just type it into your ad somewhere. All right, top 20 keywords. I bet you want to know what they are. So I know that I said that majority usually skew towards job title. That's for majority of industries. For this particular industry, there's pretty clear clusters of role titles. So most people will probably use the classification and sub-classification and then refine by either the level or the skill. So these are just really helpful if you're using job titles. Make sure they make sense. Make sure that they're words that people would actually utilize, because you can see they're very common. So if you've got a role and it's for someone that doesn't require experience, make sure you put that into your ad. People are looking for opportunities where they can be entry level. Okay, entry level, no experience required. This sort of information can help you get better matches with candidates. All right, so I'm going to wrap up, and then if you have any more questions, I'll get you to type them in for me. So in terms of what I really want you guys to walk away with is to understand what's going on in the candidate market. Okay, well, how has it changed historically over the last sort of 3 years? What's being predicted by MBIE and Careers NZ in terms of what candidates are going to be in demand and what you should be doing as a result. Okay, so utilizing the SEEK data to be able to go, okay, well, I can see what the trends are looking like at a national level, but I can also see this real-time supply and demand data, so I can work out which ones are going to be easier or harder to resource. And then use that information to really position yourself as a subject matter expert, so that when you're speaking to the hiring manager, you can start to explain to them, well, you know what, this role is going to be one of the most difficult roles to resource for in New Zealand. So I need a bit of flexibility here. How flexible are we going to be? Because we're either not going to compete in terms of where we're located, so maybe where we're located is an issue, or maybe our salary is misaligned to what's being offered in the market, or maybe they're just going to move really quickly. So us taking 8 weeks to be able to go through our normal recruitment processes isn't going to work, because really good candidates are being scooped up within the first 2 weeks of them showing interest, so we need to move faster. So it helps you just really set the expectations with those hiring managers right from the outset. And then finally, really think about, what's the best way to source this talent? Is a job ad alone going to do the job? Or do we need to really think about proactively sourcing talent? Okay, New Zealand's actually had one of the lowest unemployment rates that it's had for a very long time. With that low unemployment means that candidates are most likely already in roles, or there is significant skill shortage that exists. If that is your situation where there is just not enough talent for the roles that you're trying to fill, Talent Search can really help you proactively seek out candidates who are either willing to relocate to your area or those who are international. In our Talent Search environment, we have more than 3.5 million candidates who are saying, I want you to find me for your jobs. Okay, so they give you all their details, where they're living, how much money they want, where they'd be willing to move to, a whole range of different information. And about I think it's 1 in 6 or 1 in 7 working Kiwis have a profile on Seek. There's about 400,000 that are internationals, and there's about 2.5 million that are Aussies. So, if you need to headhunt from other countries, there's a way to be able to do that. So really think outside the square, and it doesn't cost you any more. It's just part of the solution that you sign up for whenever you post an ad on Seek. So really think about how you're going to diversify the way that you've always found the talent for your roles, because if you're working in critically short areas, or if you're finding that the talent just isn't right when you apply, but when you get candidates apply, then you may need to think differently in the way that you approach your advertising and talent sourcing techniques. Guys, thank you so much for your time today. If you have any questions, I'm happy to stay on the line. Otherwise, good luck with your talent acquisition strategies, and thank you for dialing in today. We'll send you a copy of the presentation and also a link to the recording later this afternoon. Thanks, guys.